Good Shabbos. This week's portion is Parshas Korach, and the story of Korach and his 250 men is a story of rebellion within the Jewish people and the fractures in society that cause disunity. But we can learn some positive lessons from this week's portion and from how the sages in Pirkei Avos, in Ethics of Our Fathers, understand this. When we look at the argument of Korach, we see that he had a legitimate argument. What did he say? Ki chola eda kulam kadoshim v'besacham Hashem. All of the people are holy, and God is in all of our midst. He's saying something which is an eternal truth of the Jewish people. The Shekhinah, the divine presence, rests within all of us. As Moshe himself said, Mi'iten kol am Hashem nevim, I'd like to have all of the people be prophets. Of course, that's what we're trying to attain all of our lives. And when he makes this argument, when Korach says this, Moshe doesn't say, this is ridiculous, I'm the leader, I'm the one that God chose. But rather, it says, Vayishma Moshe, Vayipal Apanav. Moshe hears, and he falls on his face, seemingly in prayer. And it's only later on, when Dasan and Aviram, two of the men that were in Korach's camp, refuse to speak to Moshe, that Moshe then gets upset and tries to make sure that Korach and his men will not be successful. So I'd like to suggest that there's really two important ingredients to be able to attain unity while still retaining a difference of opinion. One is that the opinion has to have some legitimacy. When Moshe comes down from Mount Sinai and sees the Jews serving the golden calf, he doesn't say, well, let me speak to God. Is it right or wrong? It's obvious. This is something terrible. What does he do? Immediately, he throws down the tablets and breaks them, which are actually the sign of the covenant of the Jewish people with God. But when Korach makes his argument, it says, Vayishma Moshe, as I mentioned, that Moshe listened. He understood. This is a legitimate argument. So you have to have some legitimacy in your argument. The other necessary ingredient is you need a pure motive. You have to be doing it l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. You cannot be doing it for selfish reasons. And that's why when Dasan and Aviram, two of the men, refused to come to Moshe, Moshe realized this is not an argument, and this is not a discussion about just the ideas. It's one of ego, it's one of power, it's one of control. And then he realized that their motive was not pure. And that's exactly what's said in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, in the Ethics of Our Fathers. It says, Kol machloka shehi l'shem shamayim, any argument or dispute that is for the sake of heaven, sofa lehiskayim, well, they translated here in the art school, have a constructive outcome. I'd like to translate it as that it will continue to exist. The argument will never dissipate. There'll always be a division, and it will stay. And that seems to be something positive. Something with an argument which is not for the sake of heaven, ain't so for the sky. It's not going to remain. Which one is an argument that is for the sake of heaven? This is the machlokas of Hillel and Shammai. Hillel and Shammai very famously are really the beginning of division of opinion in the area of halacha. And we're told in another section in the Talmud that they actually were arguing for many years. It's found in Tractate Eruvin. And it says that for 3 years, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, here we're talking about the house of Shammai and the house of Hillel, meaning their academy and their students, were arguing and saying, no, the halacha, the law is like us. And the other one said, no, the law is like us. A heavenly voice comes out and says, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim. These and these are the words of the living God. V'halacha k'Beis Hillel, but the law follows Beis Hillel. So the Gemara very obviously asks, if you say they're both right, if there's multiple truths, they both have a opinion which is legitimate, why do we follow Beis Hillel? Why does Beis Hillel merit that the halacha is established like them, are the words of the Talmud? And the answer is Shenochen va'aluvin, because they are basically easygoing and allow themselves, I would translate, to be oppressed, and as they allow themselves to be treated in any way which they're treated. V'shonin divreihem v'divrei Beis Shammai. They learn the words, their words, and the words of Beis Shammai. V'lo odal shmakdim divrei Beis Shammai divreihem. Not only that, but they always put the words of Beis Shammai, the house of Shammai, before their own words. In other words, they respect the other opinion. They approach this with humility. They allow themselves not to stand on ego and not to worry about their position and their power and their control. They think about it seriously. They take into account that which Beis Shammai says, and because of that, the law is like them. Not because they're right. The heavenly voice said they're both right. It could go either way. But what's more important is how you act as a human being. And if you act in a humble way, we know that you're purely l'shem shamayim, that you're purely for the sake of heaven. It's not necessarily to disparage the house of Shammai as much as to say Beis Hillel was of a pure motive. And that's exactly the lesson we learn by Korach. Korach was right, and because he was saying not only that God is in our midst, he's really arguing what the heavenly voice said. Everybody's right. We all could be leaders. We all have the Spirit of God. We could all be prophets. Why are Lama Tisnasu Akal Hashem? He says he tells Moshe, why are you making yourself supreme as a supreme leader over the congregation of God? We're all equal. And if that was l'shem shamayim, if it was for the sake of heaven, then sofa l'skai, we're okay having arguments. We don't have to. We might follow Beis Hillel, as it says. We have to decide one way or the other when it comes to practical halacha. But we're not disparaging their opinion. Their opinion stays. And as it says in other places, we record the opinion of even the minority opinion because maybe one day it will come to the fore once again. Maybe we'll use that in some way because everyone has legitimacy if they do something, if they argue l'shem shamayim for the sake of heaven. So the question is, how do we apply this today? Is there really a possibility of having Jewish unity? Do you think Jews are going to all agree with each other? We know our history. We know that has never happened, and it probably will never happen again. The question isn't whether we'll agree. The question is if we have a legitimate argument, if our motivation is pure, and then if we respect the others, we could live with each other. We could listen to Divrei Beis Shammai, we could listen to the words of Beis Shammai, we could listen to our opponents. We could understand what they're saying. We don't have to agree, but we could live together. Again, it has to be legitimate, it has to be pure motive, and then there has to be mutual respect. And that's what Jewish unity is all about. And I think that we are closer now in Jewish history than ever, although when you look at the news and read about what's going on in Israel, it doesn't sound like that at all. But it was worse in the past. I think that we're moving in the right direction, sometimes slowly, sometimes we go down, sometimes we go up. But the general direction, I think, is mutual appreciation as long as you hold a legitimate opinion. We have to respect one another. And if we respect other people and are not judgmental in a way which just is trying to show that we're right and you're wrong, Jewish unity is possible. Good Shabbos.